Mom told guests I dropped out. I stood up and showed them my Yale acceptance letter. My mom said it with a bright smile and a hand on my shoulder like she was introducing a fun fact. Emily actually dropped out. The living room went quiet in that polite, stunned way people do when they're not sure if they're allowed to react. Someone's wineglass clinked against a coaster. The charcuterie board on the coffee table suddenly felt absurd. Perfect little rows of grapes and brie, while my stomach hollowed out. I could feel the heat from her palm through my dress, her nails lightly digging into my skin like a reminder to stay still. She decided school isn't really for her, Mom continued, laughing softly as if this was a charming detour, not a lie. But it's okay. Not everyone's cut out for all that. Her eyes flicked to me, warning and pleased at the same time. Across the room, my aunt's eyebrows lifted. My mom's friends, women with perfect hair and expensive perfume, looked at me with that instant, pitying softness. I felt my throat tighten so hard I couldn't breathe properly. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, and the Yale envelope in my purse suddenly felt like it weighed 20 pounds. I stood up so fast my knees bumped the edge of the coffee table, and the plates rattled. Mom's hand slid off my shoulder, startled, and for a second her smile faltered, just a crack. "Emily," she hissed under her breath, still smiling for the room, "sit down." I could feel my face go hot, not with embarrassment exactly, but with that sharp, electric anger that makes your fingertips tingle. "No," I said, and my voice came out steadier than my body felt. The room froze. The air smelled like candle wax and citrus cleaner and the roast chicken Mom had made for show. I reached into my purse with fingers that were shaking and pulled out the thick envelope I'd been carrying all day like a secret. The paper was crisp, the corners sharp. "Actually," I said, swallowing, "I didn't drop out." I glanced at the faces watching me, confused, curious, uneasy, then back at my mom, whose eyes had narrowed into something sharp and private. "I got into Yale," I said, and I held the letter up so they could see the blue crest like a spotlight. "And I was going to tell you tonight, but I guess you wanted to tell a different story." It was a Sunday afternoon, and my mom had decided to host one of her little gatherings, which is what she calls anything where she wants an audience. She'd been cleaning since morning, vacuuming in straight lines like the carpet was a performance. She lit candles even though it was daylight. She rearranged throw pillows 3 times. When I came downstairs, she looked me up and down and told me to wear something nicer because people are coming. I asked who was coming, and she said, casually, "Just friends. Your aunt. Maybe a couple neighbors." But there was something in her tone that made my stomach tighten, like she had a plan she hadn't told me. My mom and I have never had a normal mother-daughter relationship. From the outside, she looks like the perfect parent. Always volunteering, always baking, always posting proud captions on Facebook. But in private, she's the kind of person who needs to be the narrator of your life. If she can't control the story, she tries to control the room. When I was a kid, she'd correct me mid-sentence at family dinners. If I got an award at school, she'd tell people how hard she'd push me. If I failed a math test, she'd sigh dramatically and say, "I just worry about her choices," like she was the victim of my grades. College became the biggest battleground because it represented something she couldn't fully cure it. My mom wanted me close. She wanted me at the local state school, living at home, commuting, being available. When I started talking about applying out of state, she smiled and said, that's ambitious," in the same tone you use when a kid says they're going to be an astronaut. Then she started leaving brochures around the kitchen for nearby universities. She started telling relatives, "Emily's staying local. She's very practical." She acted like my future was already decided because she decided it. The truth was I'd been working toward this quietly for years. I kept my grades high. I joined clubs that looked good on paper. I worked part-time at a bookstore and saved money in an account my mom didn't have access to. I stayed after school for tutoring, then came home and acted normal, so she wouldn't ask too many questions. I wrote essays at midnight with my laptop brightness turned down, like I was doing something illegal. The more she tried to minimize my goals, the more I hid them, Not because I wanted secrecy, but because every dream felt like it would be laughed at or edited. When I told her I was applying to Yale, she didn't yell. She didn't forbid it. She just smiled tightly and said, "That's sweet." Then, a week later, I overheard her on the phone telling my aunt, "Emily's doing some applications, but you know how she gets. She gets carried away." Like I was unstable for aiming high. I didn't stop. I just stopped sharing. The acceptance came on a rainy Wednesday. I remember because I'd come home drenched from walking from the bus stop, hair sticking to my cheeks, shoes squeaking on the tile. The envelope was in the mailbox like it had been waiting. Thick. Heavy. My name printed cleanly on the front. My hand started shaking before I even opened it because you know when something is either going to break your heart or change your life. I sat on my bed and opened it carefully. The letter inside was simple and devastating in the best way. Congratulations. I read it 3 times before it felt real. Then I put my hand over my mouth and cried silently, the kind of cry you do when you're afraid someone will hear and ruin it. I texted my best friend, and she spammed me with all caps screaming. I sat there for a long time staring at the crest and thinking I did it. I actually did it. Then the fear set in. Not fear of Yale. Fear of my mom. Because my mom doesn't celebrate things she can't claim. And Yale wasn't her plan. Yale was mine. I decided I'd tell her at the gathering because it would force her to react in front of people, and she'd have to at least pretend to be proud. I know that sounds manipulative, but when you grow up with someone who twists private conversations into weapons, you learn that witnesses matter. I thought the public setting would protect me. I didn't realize she was already planning her own version of the night. When the guests arrived, my mom was radiant. She hugged everyone, offered drinks, laughed loudly at jokes that weren't funny. She kept touching my arm or my back, steering me like a prop. "Emily's been going through a lot," she told one of her friends with a sympathetic sigh. "She's figuring herself out." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck lift. Every time she said something like that, it was a setup. Then, right when everyone was settled and my aunt had just asked me, "So, how's school going?" my mom swooped in like she'd been waiting for the opening. "Emily actually dropped out," she announced, smiling. She realized college wasn't for her. It was such a bold lie that for a second I wondered if I'd slipped into a dream. Dropped out? I hadn't even started college yet. I was still in high school. But my mom said it with such confidence that I saw the guests' faces shift. Pity, concern, that subtle judgment people do when they think you're someone's failure. And I understood immediately. She was preemptively embarrassing me so I wouldn't embarrass her with Yale. If she could paint me as unstable, unrealistic, unserious, then my success would look like luck. Or a fluke. Or something she could dismiss. Standing there with the letter in my purse, I felt a choice open up inside me like a door. I could sit down, swallow it, wait for later, try to keep peace, let her keep control. Or I could tell the truth right now. So I stood and I showed them. When I held up the Yale letter, the room shifted. My aunt's mouth fell open. One of my mom's friends whispered, "Oh my God." Another said, "Emily, that's incredible." The attention snapped toward me, away from my mom, and you could see my mom's face tighten as she realized she'd lost the room. She laughed, high and brittle. "Well," she said, waving her hand, "we'll see if she actually goes. She gets excited about things and then—" "Stop," I said, and my voice surprised me with how sharp it was. Everyone went quiet again, but this time it wasn't pitying quiet. It was watchful. My mom blinked, still smiling like a mask. "Excuse me?" "I'm going," I said. I set the letter on the table like it was evidence. "I've worked for this for years. I applied. I got in. And I don't know why you told everyone I dropped out, but you don't get to do that anymore." My aunt finally found her voice. "Why would you say she dropped out?" she asked my mom, confused and offended. My mom's eyes flashed, and for a second I saw pure anger break through her carefully curated expression. "I didn't want her to get her hopes up," she snapped, then caught herself and tried to soften it. "You know how Emily is. She's sensitive." I felt my hands clench. I'm not sensitive, I said.
I'm tired.
My mom's friend, one of the ones who always complimented Mom's hosting, looked between us and said, slowly, Emily, that's a huge accomplishment. You must be so proud. I am, I said, and my throat tightened. I was trying to share it. My mom's face went pale at the edges. She picked up her wine glass and took a sip like she needed something to steady herself. Well, she said lightly, good for you. The words sounded forced, like they hurt. After the guests left, my mom didn't scream. She waited until the door closed and the house was quiet, then turned on me with that cold voice she uses when she wants to punish you without looking crazy. You humiliated me, she said. I stared at her, exhausted down to my bones. You lied about me, I replied. I was trying to protect you, she said, like she always does. No, I said. You were trying to control the narrative. She scoffed. Don't get dramatic. And something in me finally snapped, not loudly, not with a big speech, just cleanly. I'm leaving, I said. I'm going to Yale. And I'm not going to spend my life shrinking so you can feel bigger. She looked stunned, like she couldn't imagine me actually stepping out of her shadow. You wouldn't, she said. I am, I replied, and I went upstairs and closed my door, hands shaking, heart pounding, feeling both terrified and strangely light. Since that night, things have been tense. My mom alternates between pretending it never happened and making little cutting comments about how far away Yale is and how expensive it will be and how she just hopes I don't burn out. My aunt has been checking in on me more. My friends have been hyping me up. I've been filling out financial aid forms and planning dorm shopping and trying not to feel guilty for being excited. And here's the part that feels messy. I still love my mom. I still want her to be proud in a normal way. But I'm starting to accept that I might never get that from her, and I can't keep handing her my achievements like they're weapons she can use against me. That night in the living room was the first time I didn't let her rewrite me. It won't fix everything. It didn't magically turn my mom into a different person. But it gave me something I didn't realize I'd been missing. Proof, in front of witnesses, that my life belongs to me. Thanks for watching. If you've ever had someone try to downplay your achievements in front of others, share your story in the comments. I'd really like to hear it.